Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Welcome back to Aggressive Negotiations, coming at you live from Aldhani. And John, can you stop playing with the livestock? We've got a show to do. I am just one of your hosts here, Matthew Rushing, and with me every single week is none other than Jedi Master Super Shepherd John Mills.
You know, I'm just mad because I misheard you. I thought you said al dente and I was going to have a great meal. But instead, here I am in the middle of nowhere eating, was this beef jerky? Come on, man. I feel betrayed. This isn't right. Not right at all.
You know, I will say, though, Aldhani mead is delicious, so just take some more of that, John.
Well, you know, it's the mossy highlands. That's what really gives it its flavor.
Delicious.
Yes.
Oh, man. Well, we are going to be continuing with our rewatch of Andor Season 1 as we prepare for Season 2. But before we do that, give us a star rating review over on Apple Podcasts or give us a star rating on Spotify. All of those things really help the show. Plus, if you really also like what we do, share the show with your friends. Send it to them on social media. Send it to them in an email. Text them episodes that you're like, you have to listen to these weirdos doing this show. I mean, yes, do it. So, John, Aldhani, the episode Aldhani picks up right where we left off, basically, with Luthen taking Cassian to this planet and recruiting him for this mission. In fact, we find out that his interest in Cassian really had nothing to do with this Starpath log. It really had to do with him. Mm-hmm. And it's because of his history. And I think that's one of the things that it was really interesting to me in watching this because, we know this takes place about 5 years before the Battle of Yavin. And so we get this sense that in this episode really, I think, does well, is that it gives us this sense is that the rebellion is really starting to pick up steam behind the scenes to try and create a more organized resistance to the Empire. Yeah,
I think that the character of Luthen, first and foremost, I think Skarsgård is, again, he's such a fantastic actor. He brings something to everything that he's in. I will sing his praises to the end of time. But what the show does really well here with this episode, especially in the beginning, is outlining that behind the scenes thing that you're talking about. He's the mystery figure who knows everything about Andor already. He knows him. There's no point in lying to him because he keeps showing Cassian that there is a network simply by the fact that he knows so much about it. There's no way he's one person doing all of this, that he's a piece of the puzzle, and also seeing the ship that he's in gives you a real sense that, and he's got resources too. So
yes,
that's a whole thing. And what I found interesting about it, honestly, and this I'll leap to the rest of the episode here, is you have Mon Mothma, who's a senator and obviously wealthy. And you have Luthen, who runs his shop as a front, but obviously, there's enough cash. Who knows what his specific story is by this point? We'll find out more about him as the show goes on. I'm just staying here contained in the episode. But it really is interesting because right now I'm reading a book about the French Revolution. And it's a really exhaustive book. I highly recommend it, but it's taking me forever to finish it because it is dense. But all that to say, what's interesting is it's very easy for a show like this or any work that deals with a revolutionary movement to portray everybody as, humble dirt farmers or something like that. I find it very interesting that this episode, once we have left Ferrix, we now see that this is at every social strata, that there are people in every echelon of society. And the reason I mentioned the book about the French Revolution is it calls that out, is it's like, oh, there were people in the aristocracy who were in the early days of the revolution. They were moving things forward that without them, things wouldn't have happened in certain ways. And so I find it very interesting and very, very good writing on the part of this show to illustrate all of the different social strata that need to come together in order for a thing to happen. There's no Andor saying you have too much money, or Luthen saying you're too poor, or anything like that. It's everybody recognizing everybody has to work together to get something done.
Yeah, I like the way you said that, because I one of the things that I was interested in your thoughts about the episode, the first 3 episodes are clearly about setting up the character of Andor, right? His past, his present, so that we can chart his future. And now this episode begins something that will continue throughout the rest of the season, is this interplay then between the different storylines and the different characters that we're going to follow. So characters like Luthen, characters like Andor, of course, Mon Mothma. We will also, again, see characters like Bix again, and then giving us the behind the scenes of, Deidre at the Imperial Security Bureau. And so all of these stories really kind of playing together then. And so I wanted to ask you, because, we really branch out now in this episode and start interweaving all these stories. Do you feel like that they do that well then here in this episode to kind of clue you in to all these other characters, but that it's actually like well paced? Because I know that's obviously something you kind of had a little bit of a frustration with, as we talked about in our first episode.
Yes. I think that the pacing issues essentially go away with this show. Everything clicked. Everything was at the right amount of time for everything. Maybe if I want to quibble, maybe there's stuff here or there that I think could have been tightened, but I was invested and engaged in each scene that was happening, and it everything breathed right, and everything, more importantly, juxtaposed properly. It felt like there were multiple plot lines going, and they were given equal weight. I will actually reference Lucas and say, for instance, if you look at something like American Graffiti, there are all of these competing storylines, but you never feel cheated, and you never feel like you stay with one too long. This episode has that type of rhythm to it. I never feel like I'm somewhere for too long, and I never feel like I'm cheated on any storyline. In fact, though, it's not to its detriment at all, but man, I really loved the ISB stuff. I know everybody, when the prequels came out that's older like me, was all like, oh, too much bureaucracy in the Senate and stuff like that. I live for that stuff. I love that stuff. And seeing the head of the ISB, or at least that section of it or whatever, seeing this brass tacks, no nonsense dude, and seeing the internal politics and the way everything works out, I suddenly saw something where I'm like, oh, I see a functional organization here. And I think that's the thing that really took off about the show for me, was I was like, I believe that this empire can exist right now. Like, I believe in this mechanism.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's funny you went right to that, because it was one of the things I was going to key in on was the ISB, and I like the way that you put that, in that you can understand how this is a functional bureaucracy. But I think one of the ways that I love this is that, I don't think Tony Gilroy has watched, all of the animated stuff and all the things we've gotten about, then the behind the scenes of the ISB and something like Rebels or what we got in Bad Batch and all that kind of stuff, right? And yet this really seems to fit within that mold of watching all of these guys there and women who are sitting around this table, right? And they are all vying for power in this organization. And so the guy at the head of this organization, though, doesn't really care about all of their political games. He's just trying to get the job done, right? And that's what's kind of fascinating is to see the way in which, and this is something, I'll say something fairly interesting in this. He feels a lot like the Thrawn type of guy. Not the same type of level of intelligence, right? But it's the no nonsense. We're here to get the job done. I'm not here to play politics. I'm here to make sure that we're rooting out the insurgents, that we're keeping this empire safe, that we're doing the job we were put here to do. I'm not here to play your stupid games, because, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, and that's not what I'm here for. And so I really appreciate that about this. And the most interesting part of this, too, is that as we're introduced then to Deidre as a character, one of the fascinating parts about this is that you get the sense that this is also kind of her thought process, because the reason that she's focused on her career, but at the same time, she's actually focused on trying to put pieces together that she sees forming in a puzzle in her mind. And she kind of seems to be the only one really doing that at this moment, with this idea of this thing being stolen from this section. And she's starting to do that. And I find that really interesting because it makes her a very compelling character, because now she's on a hunt, right? And she's on a hunt to which, as a character, she might not be supported in doing this. But it's for the Empire's point of view, this is actually the right thing to do. And so that's what I find really interesting. And like you said too, this, like, it's not a long episode. And yet it's so tightly written with these different storylines that I feel like I kind of immediately know her as a character, even though we don't spend tons of time with her as a character.
The performance is fantastic. This actress, forgive me, I forget her name right now. I don't always retain actor or actress names particularly well at first. I think she's phenomenal. She's terrific at giving expressions that you can key off of and stuff like that. But just to pile on even more about the ISB stuff, and I think it just sort of proves how fascinating the ISB stuff is that leader that we've both talked about, that we're fixated on, he illustrates another big problem, whether it's a company, whether it's a bureaucracy, whatever organization it is that guy, you already know from this one episode, if that guy is gone, pandemonium. These people will just turn it into Game of Thrones and be at each other's throats. And the only thing keeping them under control is him.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with the Empire itself too, is once the strong leader is gone, it'll all fall apart. And so you see the importance of legacy, which is why I think it's great that he calls out Deidre when he doesn't give her way. And he says, settle down. You were brought here because I see you as the type of person I need to be here right now. And so it shows that he's even got the thought toward, I'm not going to live forever. I need somebody that's going to come behind me. And whether it's you or somebody else, I need to know that you all will get it done when I'm gone. But that strong personality, he trips and falls down the stairs, ISB is going to fall apart.
Yeah.
At least partially. The one thing that I go back and forth on, I want to throw this to you, is with Deidre, I'm in a glad, not glad sense of somebody who went through the 90s. In that franchise lore would almost dictate, well, you brought back Thrawn, why wouldn't you just make her Isan Isard or Isard, right? Iceheart from the ISB in the 90s books. But I'm not mad about it. It doesn't irritate me. I'm like, that would have been a neat one. At least give her two
Mhm.
different colored eyes
Yeah.
or something like that as a nod. Do you
Yeah.
think do you wish they'd done that? Is there any part of you that's like, I wish it had been Isard?
Yeah, I mean, it could have been a really interesting thing to do, and give you the opportunity to explore that character in a new way, and Filoni and George did with anything from the old EU. They took it and then they made it their own, and where they could pay homage to what came before, they did, but they were never afraid to just do their own thing. So I think that would have been cool in that sense. I would have no issues with them doing that. I do think one of the interesting parts of having her be her own character in some ways is that I don't know exactly what's going to happen to her. I mean, we're not going to talk about it when we get till we get there, but like her character just has a really interesting arc, with what happens to her. So, and here again, I think she's utterly fascinating in the way the portrayal is. I mean, she's just on top of it. She's an incredibly interesting character, in the same way that I think, like you said, Skarsgård just owns Luthen. And I mean, the performance then that he gives in this that I find incredibly fascinating is just, there's that wonderful moment, right, where he is reorienting himself for the world of Coruscant, where he is literally putting on the costume like Batman to go into Gotham and be a different person, because he can't be who he truly is. He has to be somebody completely different. And I mean, maybe the actual example is Bruce Wayne being the playboy, instead of, who he truly is inside. And so, and that performance, just as he washes his face and he puts on the wig and he flexes his fingers as he's putting on. And then that moment where he just kind of like, all of a sudden that character comes out and he starts like kind of like play laughing in the mirror. And it's like, oh, totally different dude. What is beautiful about that is that even though we don't actually see that same scene play out for Mon Mothma, what we see is the moment when she gets home and, she lays down that piece of jewelry and there's that like weight that has come off of her because she has just had that mask on all day. And now she's in some ways kind of slowly taking it off until she realizes, oh, I'm screwed because we got a dinner party tonight and I'm going to be surrounded by these people all night too. And like, there's such a great mirroring for these different characters so that the thematic elements that we're getting with one character are actually helping build into another character that they're not sharing screen time with. That's really, really good writing.
It is. It's very good writing. I think that this is an episode that is firing on all cylinders. The one thing that it doesn't fill me up with joy, however you want to put it, is coming back to it now, even the time that we spend with, and forgive me, I forget the character's name, but he's the zealous security guy that he goes back home to mom. Yeah. The unfortunate thing is I understand I understand from a utilitarian sense why we have to spend that amount of time with them and get there. And I don't hate it. It's actually some nice world building for Coruscant, showing me a different side of the city that I haven't seen before, giving that brutalist architecture. Okay, this is different than the entertainment district or all these other districts I've seen. Very cool. But when you have ISB showing what a tightly run, clear, bureaucratic organization looks like, and then the disorganized, hidden information, federated nature of the rebellion and how dysfunctional it is, and seeing that the leader there in that situation of that camp, she doesn't have that same strength of personality that the head of the ISB does, and that's what leads to problems within the context of the episode. His stuff just feels like, yeah, okay, like it feels necessary but not fulfilling, I guess is the way that I would put it.
No, I agree with you in that sense, because Syril's story is one that is something that feels like a long game, not just for this season, but for the 2 seasons. And so if there's any detriment to this season at all, I find it to kind of be his storyline. So even though I love this show, I'm right there with you. I think that is just something that I'm never as interested in as the other storylines. And so what I'm hoping then is that once we get to season 2 and we see it play out there, it'll all kind of make sense in the end, which, you know, I feel like every TV show kind of has that one character where it's like, oh, I didn't truly get that character until the end of the show. And so that might be him, but if it's not, then I'm also going to be left with like, we spent so much time on this character and I really need to.
Give me an example. I have an example, what you're talking about in my head already, where at the end of this character's journey, I was like, okay, I'm glad he was there. But like when he started out, I was like, why am I spending any time with this character? I don't like him. Who would you go to as an example of that in another show, another series?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, I think one of the characters that I'm going to jump to is, I'm actually going to jump to Quark in Deep Space Nine, where it's like his full arc really makes much more sense, because and Deep Space Nine is my favorite Star Trek series of all time. I love it.
It's the best
I
one.
adore it. I think it's phenomenal, right? But I think, you know, one of the things I could say about Quark is that his arc in totality is what makes him really special. Being able to go back and rewatch episodes and kind of know where he's going to go in the end, that I really love, because it all then really works and it builds. But, you know, just the Ferengi in general, sometimes those characters in those episodes can feel like, okay, why am I spending time on this? And the beauty is that they make those matter, right? And so that's the thing that I love, is that they don't, well, except for Prophet and Lace, which should never have existed as an episode. You know, otherwise, without Quark, you don't get Rom, and without Rom, you don't get Nog, and those storylines just become so incredibly important to the series as a whole. That for me, that's one of those characters where it's like, yeah, the whole is in some ways greater than the sum of its parts.
I love the example that you use. Quark is, I wouldn't have seen it coming, but I got you. I see. I understand what you're saying. For me, I was going smaller scale character, Max's brother in Stranger Things.
Oh, yes.
I was like, well, why is this even in the show? And then we got to his season. I was like, oh, and then I was like, oh, okay. And then at the end, at the very end of that character, I was like, oh,
yeah,
this worked out okay.
Yeah, great way to bring up a show that's finally coming back after all the kids are like 32 and have beer guts.
I'm gonna use the joke I love to use, that the plot of season 5 of Stranger Things is going to be that Vecna got them all trapped in subprime mortgages, and the whole season is going to be them figuring their way out.
Oh man! So I got to ask you about this too, because, you know, obviously this episode and this 3-part arc really introduce us to this whole heist that we're going to attempt here on Aldhani. And the reason that we're doing this is because you know that Luthen and Mon Mothma clearly want to be able to fund the rebellion to do more, but they need the money to do it. And so this is one of those first real big steps in this is one of those first big catalyst moments for this nascent rebellion really to kind of find a way to come together. And so I wanted to ask you just about that process, because we meet all these, new characters there, and we don't get to spend a ton of time with them. But I just wanted to ask you about that setup.
I think that, you're creating a source of untraceable funds. If it comes from Luthen's account in too large an amount, you can find him out. Mon Mothma can't touch her money and use it for this. We already meet in this episode. She's got a minder. She's got somebody watching her at all times, make sure she stays in line, sort of thing. I love the idea of setting up the heist. You know where my mind went this time with it, though, immediately? Was how would Saw Gerrera do this? Because they mentioned Saw early on when the guy falls asleep at his post. He says, hey, if you fell asleep in Saw's team, your head would be on a pike just for kicks. Don't let it happen again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I look at this heist and I'm like, after what we got of Saw in Clone Wars, but then more importantly, what we got of him in Bad Batch, right? I'm like, immediately my brain goes to, ooh, how ruthless are these rebels going to be? Like, I've got something in my brain where I'm like, ooh, how is this going to play out specifically?
Yeah. I think that the question that I kind of come down to in that is, does Saw have the tactical ability to pull off anything like this at all, or even to think like this? Because Saw is such a blunt instrument, and this is a precision strike. Not only is it precision, but I mean, just even the fact that we learn this is to take place during an event that only takes place every 3 years, and we've got the right people on the inside of the job and the outside of the job to make this happen. And Andor is there because it gives them a much better chance of success. And so that's the thing. I guess the question I would come to is like, would this even be a thing in Saul's mind in the first place? Oh,
no, I think Saul wouldn't want to take the money because it was blood money. And I think that his goal, and I could see, again,
just blow it up.
Yeah. To give the Aldhani people their river back. He would view that as the victory here. I'll blow up the dam and give them their river back and screw the money. Who cares? And I think that's interesting in and of itself, because that's where this episode sort of pays off for a longtime fan, because you've seen how Saul would go about something like this. So you already have that tension of like seeing these different aspects of the rebellion and knowing that we're still not at the point in Rebels where Saw has his big speech with everybody at Yavin and everything, and I'll give him, I'll double back, because I talked about they didn't take the opportunity to tie Isard in and instead have Deidre. It's a push. I'm not complaining about it, guys. I did like the fact that when Luthen is talking to Andor, you find out Andor was at Mimban, and that's just a little bit of color given to it. But immediately I can cue in and go, aha, Mimban is where Han Solo was too. And it's like, that's the type of little tie-in where I'm like, oh, I know what the Mimban conflict was. But if I haven't seen Solo: A Star Wars Story, I just need to know it's a war. That's it. And it's like, that's a really good tie-in sort of thing. And maybe that's the advantage that Gilroy and the crew on this show can have, is that they'll make reference, but since they're not diehards, they'll make reference in the right way, quote unquote, where it won't be two shots focused on the Dejarik table in the Millennium Falcon's hold. Mm-hmm. It'll be one shot instead of two. It'll be a fleeting reference instead of lingering on the past, as it were. So maybe that's what's working to the show's advantage.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really interesting. You get Luthen also handing him this very esoteric crystal that is a reference to the Knights of the Old Republic game, which is an incredibly cool deep cut, which I love, right? And so, like you said, it's like there are all these little moments that really pay off fans, but not in a way that hurts anybody else, from enjoying the episode. And I think that's fantastic. I think maybe the one last question that I wanted to ask you about, and we talked a little bit about Mon Mothma, but I think kind of circling back to her and, meeting her husband, who just seems like an absolute tool, was fascinating because he's just like, oh, why is everybody so boring? And like, he's just this wealthy jerk store who has nothing better to do than to throw dinner parties because his life is so boring and he doesn't care about anything. And it was like, I remember watching the show for the first time. We never knew that Mon Mothma was married. But to have her be married and be in this marriage to somebody who understands absolutely nothing of who she is and who she's become, and actually also be kind of diametrically opposed to who she's become because he could care less, is utterly fascinating to me.
It definitely shows the strain that can happen in a marriage when somebody follows a different path. And and it's that thing where it's like, it happens with any marriage. People grow and develop at different rates. And I think the fascinating thing with this episode is sitting there and you get enough to say to yourself, but why is she with him? And that's a question you want answered. This is the proper set. It's not a mystery box. It's not I'm having a dinner party, and at that point, I'll open up this box that's sitting here on the table that will tell you. No, I see their interaction, and I say, well, why are they staying together? Now I want to know more. And it's because I see that interaction, and it's played so well. And again, other people have said this, but what a testament to Lucas and his casting director for episode 3. To know how vital this actress was going to be as Mon Mothma. Like, God bless them for knowing how well she could play this role, even though she was cast for the equivalent of one scene in episode 3. I mean, they paid attention, man. Yeah.
I mean, she's phenomenal. And I think, like you said, the beauty of this is her portrayal and the questions that arrive around her are just so fascinating. And she just does such a great job of bringing life to a character that, we saw for seconds in Return of the Jedi and we saw for seconds in Revenge of the Sith. And, thankfully we got an opportunity to spend some more time with her in Rebels. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's phenomenal casting, the fact that we've actually gotten to spend more time with her. And it's great that this show exists in that sense, just to be able to give us more of her and that story, because we do know that she's so pivotal to the rebellion. And we even saw it, in Rogue One. So I think it's great. Obviously, first 3 episodes for you, like, you liked a lot, but you also had some issues with. It sounds like this is the episode that really righted the ship for you. And if you had a rating for this episode, what do you think you'd give it?
Oh gosh, I mean, this is a solid 4. Okay, why not a 5? Well, the Cyril stuff, I get it. It's the long play. And there's resolution, but not complete resolution. Yeah. It's not a fault of the show.
Right.
It's a 4-star piece of what could potentially be a 5-star. Like, it's solid 4.
Yeah.
Like, it will never go lower than 4. It could only go up with another rewatch or something like that. So that's where I end with it. Where did you end with it?
Yeah, I think I I'm close to where you are, and since I think I'd give it 4.5 out of 5, and part of that is just because at this point, in the storyline, I don't quite know where we're going with the serial story, and so I'm kind of like, why are we still following this dude at this point and getting to his mother's house where he gets slapped, and he just kind of seems like a little pity party boy.
Yeah.
So yes, in that's where it's like but everything else. In some ways, it's like everything else in this episode brings it so close to a 5 because the story is so on point, and the acting for all the characters, even like I think of all the crew that we meet in Aldhani, they all feel interesting and fascinating in that sense too. And so it's like everything is really firing on all cylinders by this point, and it just feels like we're just gonna we're gonna hit the pod race button and we're just gonna fly from now on. So I'll be really excited then to continue the story, and I kind of love where we're kind of taking this at this slower pace because it really gives us opportunity to kind of dig into all the nitty-gritty details. But John, if people wanted to catch up with you, see what else you've got going on, maybe talk some more Andor and just all the interesting Star Wars news and things that are happening over on the internet, where would they find you?
Oh, well, gosh, if you want my opinion on anything, you can reach me at MattRushing02. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm kidding. At Kessel Junkie. And you can find me here on the network co-hosting a show called House Lights, where we look at the work of directors. And we have lots of fun with that, looking at directors, everybody from Fincher to Tarantino to someday they will answer my dreams, and we will actually look at the works of Catherine Bigelow, one of my favorite underappreciated directors.
Yes.
And Matt, I know I also appear sometimes over on the 602 Club, which is one of the many ways people can reach you online. So where can people reach out to you?
Absolutely. Check me out on the 602 Club over on the TFM network with a lot of other Star Trek talk as well, with a lot of other shows. So if you like either of those things where you're talking about fandoms that you love or the other Star franchise, please do check that out. Would love that. Over on social media, I'm under the name MattRushing02 on networks. So if you search that name and I'm there, that's the name I'll be under. You can also find me here on the network doing Outpost. Drea Kaufman and I finished that show where we talked about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. But, John, I hear that the chimes of the temple calling, I think they're asking us to bring back some of this Aldhani mead because Yoda is actually a big fan. So I think it's time to close these negotiations.
He can drink a surprising amount for his body weight. And Master Rushing, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.